Deal kindly with my name, dear friend. Please be gentle as you speak. To defile it for whatever end, for whatever course you seek, could hurt me much and loved ones too, if you should me defame. And so I urge, be just and true, deal kindly with my name. And I promise to be kind with yours, and ever to be fair, so that the friendship that is ours is kept with tender care. For slander stabs the very heart of all that's just and civil, and bludgeons every gentle part with low and skulking evil. So when we speak of others near, and would some harsh thing say, may we first choose with mercy dear a higher, better way. All things are heard by God above, for glory or for shame. If you would show another love, deal kindly with his name. That is a poem by Owen Cosgrove that I thought was so good about how we choose to speak of others. And, I've heard John say many times that we might never be guilty of murdering someone, but we have often been guilty of assassinating someone's character by speaking ill of someone. So I think it's just a good reminder to be careful with how we speak about others. This is Looking Up, a podcast for Christian women. I'm Carla Moore. I'm one of your hosts, and with me is Kathy Pollard, your other host. And we get together once a week, talk about things that are interesting to us as Christian women. Hope that you also find these things interesting and valuable. We have a group on Facebook that's an active community. We'd love for you to join us there. We'd love for you to check us out on YouTube and on any of the podcast platforms, and like us and share us. We want you to like us. Don't we? We want people to like us. Not because we're trying to monetize. We're not trying to monetize the podcast. And by the way, we talked about this a little bit before in our pre-chat. There are ads popping up on some people's feeds, but that's not on our behalf. That is
the YouTube version.
Right, the YouTube version. So what did you tell the rest of us what you told me earlier about that?
Yeah, when it was brought to our attention, they said that they knew we weren't trying to monetize, but they're still seeing ads. And so I looked into it, and even if you're not in YouTube's partnership program, which we're not because we have no intention of ever monetizing it, they can still place ads in your video. And so if somebody watching, we don't have anything to do with that, and we can't do anything about that. And if somebody watching doesn't want the ads, then you have to upgrade you have to like subscribe to YouTube. Like if you're watching the free version, you're going to see the ads.
Yeah.
But if you don't want them, then you can upgrade and get the YouTube version where you don't get the ads. So
YouTube is monetizing YouTube.
Yes.
But we are not monetizing.
Yeah, they're benefiting from placing those ads, but we don't. But we have no control over that. So
yeah.
But we're sorry that that's happening. And
I
have the free version of YouTube, so I get the ads too. You can skip it after so many seconds,
Yeah. It's a little alarming. You never know what they're going to choose to advertise, but
no kidding.
On our podcast. But I mean, we are using their service for free. So
well, and when you read about it, they claim that the ads that they place, they, try and see that it fits the audience, the viewers, that it would match up. Yeah, it would be interesting to see what they think fits our
because I know what pops up on my Facebook, it's usually some kind of Geritol or something about hot flashes or something like that. Like, what? Why would they put those on my newsfeed?
Why do they think I've been searching information about that anyway?
Yeah, it is a little alarming how they know us. Yeah, but we won't go down that road.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, this is Looking Up. We're a podcast for Christian women. Glad you've joined us. We're going to have a little topic that we talk about in a little bit. But first, tell me what's been going on in your neck of the woods, as Al Roker would say.
Well, let's see. First of all, Neil's out of town this week. So I'm manning the fort. And, we've had some fiascos with Peaches. So this morning I was looking out the window. It was kind of early, and I saw some emergency vehicle, like blue flashing lights, going real slow in front of our house. And, I thought, my heart just started pounding. My first thought was Peaches has gotten out and somebody has hit her on the road. And so I thought they were getting ready to pull into my driveway. That's how slow they were going. But they didn't. I just watched them and they just kept going by. I don't know what was going on and why they were going so slow, but there was a couple of police officers driving by with their lights on.
They're looking for that escaped convict. Didn't you hear about that on the
That's
news?
probably what it was. But I ran after I watched them for a few minutes. I ran to the back and I hunted her down, and she was back there where she was supposed to be. But
Mm-hmm.
that's just where my head is now. If something
Mm-hmm.
happens unusual, my first thought is
It's
she has
Peaches,
escaped. She has
your road
escaped. But
cow. She's
yeah,
getting pretty close to, well, you what, have another couple of months before you have a baby Peaches?
yeah. In about 2 months, 2 months from now, her baby's due. So she's in her last trimester. She's finally showing, and she's starting to lay down a little more, like she's getting tired.
We know that feeling, don't we?
We know that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, we had a really Neil and I had a fun weekend together because Bowling Green had their Harvest Festival,
Oh, fun.
which we went to, and everybody has their little crafts and good lemonades out, and I had a peach lemonade, and Bub's Barbecue, the Waddell's food truck,
Mm-hmm.
was out, so we went and got their food, and then we have someone else that we know, Rachel Souders, who's, I don't know if you remember meeting Alicia Souders when you were here. It's
Yeah.
their daughter,
Mm-hmm.
but she crochets cute little animals and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
she had a booth out. So we just spent some time there and had a good time with that. And then that evening of the same day, our congregation had the trunk or treat.
Mm.
So we had a wonderful turnout from the community. And I think the reason is because the person that was in charge of organizing it moved it up a week. And
Yeah, I was wondering
so
about that.
there weren't a lot of competition activities
Mm-hmm.
going on in the community. So we had a huge turnout. I think that was a genius idea.
Yeah.
And then this weekend is our church family retreat out at the Big Reedy Lodge, Friday and Saturday. So that'll be fun too. So
Oh,
just,
busy. Did
yep,
you
lots
dress up your
of,
car?
no, we didn't this year. We were duds. First of all,
Did you dress up?
no, we were duds. I stink at it. It completely stresses me out. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we actually won an award last time because they do this little like best costume, best trunk, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
We won third place. I'm pretty sure it was a pity award because
Did you
we're
do the
just,
truck or the Mustang?
we did the Mustang and we did the mad scientist, like the lab. So I have a bunch of test tubes and things like that from
Mm-hmm.
herbalism. So we just ordered lab coats and we had Neil like the wild hair wig,
Yeah.
and we put up, all these weird looking odds and ends and test tubes and things like that, and
Mm-hmm.
had candy. And so that I'm one and done. That was my one idea.
Yeah.
Like I can't do
Yeah.
this
You can
every
only
year.
do that
So
every few years.
yeah.
I do.
So anyway, we have a chili cook off. So I participated in that. I made a big
Mm-hmm.
batch of chili. So I
Yeah.
did that. But other than that,
It's a
I went
fun time
around
of
and
year for
said,
festivals.
it is. And because the weather's so pretty and,
Mm-hmm.
it's fun. So
Yeah.
it was all good. We had a wedding shower on Sunday. So it was a full weekend, but all good
Yeah.
stuff. How about
Yeah.
you?
Good. Well, let's see. On John was out of town last weekend. He went to Idaho for the Linda Road lectures and loved it. It's a great place to go. I wish I could have gone with him, but I just needed to be here. But he was gone. So on Friday, I went with a group of women to the church building and we sewed pillowcases for cheer baskets, which I
Oh,
thought
cute.
it's a neat idea because usually
That
cheer
is a neat
baskets are kind
idea.
of the same, fruit and stuff like that. But Melissa Lovelace, I know I've talked about her on here before. She's a big quilter. She is a seamstress, but she came up with the idea last year to make pillowcases, Christmassy kind of pillowcases to go in the
Mhm.
baskets. But she had cut them all out, and it's just an easy. She had actually all the pieces ready to sew, and she calls it a burrito method, where you it's really just three pieces of fabric, and anyway, I won't go into the whole detail, but you roll it up and you sew this seam and that seam, and before you know it, you have this pillowcase. And so those will all go in the cheer baskets. That was one of the things we did. I took mom for a drive on Saturday. We went to Fredericksburg, which is about an hour away. It's a place that I think has good memories for her because whenever we would have company back in the day, that's where she'd want to take people. You know how you take people for a drive or show them around where you live. And Fredericksburg is just kind of a little country town. It's not little anymore. It's got very German roots and heritage, lots of German food. And
It's a tourist destination,
yeah, it
right? Yeah.
is. there's lots of bed and breakfasts and things like that
It's a
there,
pretty
but
area.
it is. And they're the big Main Street. We didn't get out and walk Main Street, but we used to do that. Like a bunch of little five and dimes and craft type shops and quilt shops, things like that. But anyway, we drove and went to a Mexican food restaurant that she likes called Mamacita's. They have this green sauce, and I don't know what it is, but I could drink it. It's like salsa, but it's green. It's almost like a radioactive green. So it's not like a tomatillo sauce. It's a
Yikes.
different green. I should have
So
sent you a
it's
picture
not
of it.
a salsa verde or anything. It's
No,
just,
but
oh,
maybe it's like a
interesting.
salsa verde with sour cream stirred in. I don't know. It's
Hmm.
green. But anyway, that's something that we did. Micah finished my island. I shared a picture of that
Yeah,
yesterday.
gorgeous.
Yeah, I'm so excited about that. I've been waiting for that. And that was one of those things that it was just, I've been looking and looking and looking, which I know is such a first world thing, just to have that certain piece of furniture that you're looking for. But I just had in my mind what I wanted because I have a big open space in the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
and you can always use more counter space, right? And drawers.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I was able to tell him what I wanted, and there's several things that he suggested and talked me into that I wasn't sure about, and I just love the way it turned out. So that's one thing we did.
Well,
But
when you shared the pictures, I
mhm.
went all creepy creepster on you because I was like zooming in, looking at the counter space behind the island because you're so
Mm,
good at decorating and arranging things, and you have like these little groupings on your countertops. And so I was like zooming in, going, "Oh, that's cute. Look where she did that. Oh, look what she did around her little coffee station. Oh, look."
well, it's funny you say that because whenever he does make something or when he finishes a project, cabinets, whatever, he does a video. Like he'll take video of the area. And I was like, I had just fixed lunch. I had made a flank steak in the oven, which spatters stuff everywhere, And so I was like, you gotta wait a minute, let me clean stuff up. So everything was like shoved over to the side where you couldn't see it in the picture. So it's like the typical, throw things in the oven. In fact, I put 2 cookie sheets in the oven that I had
Yeah.
cooked the flank steak on. And I told Mike, I said, don't let me forget. And of course, the next day I turned it on and it was in there and the whole kitchen started smoking up. But anyway, my best thing that I wanted to share with everybody this week is that Alice, my friend Alice, she's doing pretty well. She's improving. She had the stem cell transplant on, I want to say like August the 5th, I think, something like that. So it's been about 2.5 months and it's been rough. I mean, it's been rough.
Mm.
And I know I've mentioned it several times, but she got a letter from her donor, her stem cells donor. And they can't say who they are. They can't give their name or specific details. In fact, the letter has a few things blocked out, but she sent it to me yesterday and I asked her if I could share it. And she said yes, but I wanted to read what this letter said from her donor. And I think that she had told me that she'd found out that it's like a young man, like a 19-year-old young man, but I
Wow.
may be wrong about that. But this is what the letter says. It says, "Hi, I hope that this letter finds you well. I wanted to reach out and introduce myself as much as I can. I am a blanked out year old guy. I just graduated college a year ago and recently started my career working in administration at a zoo. I love animals, outdoor activities like hiking and skiing, and am a huge sports fan, especially baseball, college football, and college basketball. Just last year, I could have never imagined that our paths would cross or that I would be reached out to by, this was crossed out also, to help you. A few months ago, I donated some cells for you, and I hope that they are working and that you're recovering and growing stronger every day. I know that on my end, I think about you a lot, and I'm always keeping you in mind and hoping for your health and recovery. Even though we've never met, I know that you're a strong and amazing person, and I will always be here fighting for you and sending you moral support however I can. I hope that you know how loved you are by a stranger who you have never met, and know that I would donate to you 1,000 times over if it would help in your recovery. You got this. I'm rooting for you."
Man alive. That gave
I
me
know.
goosebumps.
I know. The first time I read it, I was just bawling looking at
Oh,
this. Talk about a
wow.
stranger's love,
Mm.
and the donation
No, I
process.
seriously have goosebumps right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
it is. There's just something about it that was so
Mm.
amazing. I knew that would happen. John forgot his keys, had to come in here. Told him before we started recording, get anything you need out of the office, and he forgot his keys. Anyway,
That letter
So
is like the ending of a beautiful Hallmark movie or something.
yeah, exactly. It could be a movie.
It could be a
But
movie. That's right.
man, if I could send him a letter, I would say the same thing. I hope that you know how loved you are by a stranger, because I mean, through God and through the medical process, he saved her life. He literally did. And
Hmm.
talk about the love of a stranger and what we can do for other people and the selflessness, because I don't think it was a very easy process. If I remember right, it has to do with, there's something like a oh, what do you call it? They used to, that you have to put a needle down into your bone marrow, which is not a fun process. So that's
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
I loved hearing about that.
Well,
Oh
I'm glad Alice let you share that. That's
yeah.
amazing. And we're thankful for that she's getting better and making progress. We're thankful to this outdoorsy young man who
Mhm.
was sacrificial and took the time to write her. He'll never find out that we're talking about it, but thank you, whoever you are.
Yeah. Well, he says that I would be reached out to by any that was marked out to help you. So it makes me wonder if it's somebody that Alice knows who spread the word that she needed these stem cells. Because I know at the time she said, here's the donation process. You have to be, I want to say, somewhere between 18 and under 40. You can't donate stem cells if you're over 40. I guess my stem cells are too
Oh,
aged now.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, we've we're too old to donate.
Nobody wants our stem cells anymore. So we're aged.
Oh no.
Anyway, so
Uh,
that
well,
was
thanks for
exciting.
sharing that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's about all that's been going on. So you got anything else you want to share before we dive in?
No, let's dive in. Oh, I
Okay.
do. I do. I jotted
Okay.
something down that I ran across that I thought was just a curiosity.
Okay.
Amsterdam has this new thing out that they're doing called the offline club. And their premise is that they're trying to get back to the 90s before the internet.
Oh,
And their slogan is swapping screen time for real time. And so
okay.
like they're having more coffee shops and things like that where they're not providing an internet service and asking you to leave your phone, keep your phone put away or out in the car or whatever, so that people are just interacting or reading a book or but
Mm-hmm.
it just caught me off guard because it's like trending there in
Yeah.
Amsterdam and that people are just craving that disconnect from the internet and real time with real people and slowing down. And
Yeah.
I was like, hell, let's bring that to the States.
Yeah. That does sound,
Let's start our
it's
own little offline club.
so many great things that you can access through the internet, but yet it's changed so much. I don't think we're going to
Hmm.
know the total impact until I don't know much later, but it's here to stay. So,
Yeah, for sure.
but I do love the
But I like
idea
the
of
idea of
unplugging.
places that you can go and times where you can just step away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think some of us are afraid of that, not being able to stay connected
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
oh, what ifs, we're so used to being able to access information at our
Yeah.
fingertips at any moment that we want to.
Yeah, I have heard about studies that they've done where people experience anxiety if they can't for some reason get to their phone or if they find out they've left their phone at home.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, there's times, in fact, I think I did it once this week when I pulled out, I pulled out, went down, got all the way down to 290 and realized I didn't have my phone. I had to come back. But the thought was, you go through that process. Do I really need it? What if can I just do this without my phone? But then you start thinking, what if something happens to John? He needs me. What if mom
Mhm.
needs me? Just different things. And so I
Yeah.
ended up coming back to get it. I even have a little thing that beeps on my watch that says your phone has been left behind. So that's how I realized I didn't have it.
I've started at night. I don't have my phone or laptop or anything like that in the bedroom. I put it in another room to charge
Yeah.
overnight unless Neil's out of town. And then I have my phone on the nightstand in case, something happens or the boogeyman's trying to get me.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to have your phone for that reason.
Yeah.
All right. So, what we're going to talk about today, if I can put it succinctly, is respecting the opinions of others. And, tiny bit nervous about this because people have a lot of opinions. Everybody has their opinions and everybody thinks they're right in their opinions. And if you encroach upon their opinions or tell them that's just your opinion, it often becomes one of those things that is a big deal. And so
Mm-hmm.
can't help being a little bit nervous about how this will be received, but I think everybody knows this well enough by now. Unless you're new, we're not trying to stir anything up. We're just trying to be biblical in our approach to even something like opinions. And
Mm-hmm.
when I was getting ready for this, I really intended for it to mainly be about non-biblical opinions, just things that happen in our life. But the more I looked into it, there's really not any way of separating it. It all, of course, because of how we uphold the truth of Scripture, it's all going to go back to what God has to say about it. So it'll be intermixed, I'm sure, as we go along, as we talk about it. But what made me really start thinking about this and suggest that we spend some time talking about it was a conversation I had with my niece last week. My niece Lauren, she's got a little boy who's 4, and she's pregnant with another little girl who's due in December. And she was asking me about immunizations and how we handled that when the boys were younger. And boy, you talk about a controversial topic. And like I said, we're not looking to get into any debates. And in fact, next week, I don't think this would happen, but we don't want there to be any kind of debate about any of these examples that we bring up. Really, what we want to do is talk about how to handle when someone may have a different opinion than me. But she was telling me um, that the number of immunizations has changed, because when my boys were little, I think they had like DPT, which is diphtheria, polio, and tetanus, and then they had, I can't remember, but they had shots like at 2 months and 4 months and 18 months, and then there was like a booster at 4 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I told her, we followed through with that, and didn't have any issues. And she was expressing concern because, you hear about things that immunizations are linked to autism. You hear things that there are products in the immunizations that Christians shouldn't have any part in. Just the whole freedom of choice. And I have my opinion. I've had my opinion about the fact, to me, and this is just where I'm going to start out. I felt like people have the luxury of not immunizing their child because so many people before them have and eradicated those diseases, so they're not as widespread. Okay, now that's been my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a very informed opinion. It's just because I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it, because it doesn't really affect me a whole lot anymore. But then she said, well, you would be really surprised at the number of immunizations that are being recommended now. And so I asked her for a list, and she pulled up on her phone her pediatrician's list. And it was a full 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Well, it was online, so it was a piece of paper, but it was a picture of a piece of paper. And it had 5 rows across and 6 rows down. So 30 different immunizations.
Wow.
Stretching over the course from birth until like 6 years old. And some of them were like a flu shot, every year. Every year they recommend a flu shot. But there's just a tremendous amount of immunizations that they recommend for children these days. And so there's a lot of opinions regarding things like that. And it's not just that. Here we are 2 weeks away, and by the time this comes out, 1 week away from the election, the presidential election, the senatorial, and all of these elections that are going on, and the political ads.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that alone just makes me want to run screaming from the room. Just the rhetoric and the twisting and the spin that goes on both sides and every issue. I was thinking about even something this morning that they were talking about on the Today Show, is that the American Airlines is going to start a new boarding process. Have you heard about this?
No.
So if you, like on Southwest, when you board Southwest, they have this line, and you're supposed to line up according to your number. So if you are A22, you stand in a certain way, in a certain position, and then you get on based on that. But there are other airlines that it's like you have Group A, Group B, Group C, and everybody just crowds. And what is it about that just brings out the worst in humanity? But American Airlines is going to have a new process that you will have a number assigned to you in a group. And if you try to board before your group, this noise will sound from the gate. So they use shame and peer pressure to prevent you from trying to get on ahead of other people when you shouldn't. So, even opinions on how do you board an airplane? Dating. There's the whole dating issue. Should you court? Should you date? It's a matter of opinion. There's things like, one of my pet peeves is etiquette in a store. I know that you've heard me say people will leave their basket over here and then they'll walk over here. So they're taking up both sides of the aisle and you can't get your basket through. And it just is one of those stupid things about me that I'm like, keep your basket with you and then I can get around you. So that's my opinion. Store etiquette or personal space, don't get in someone's personal space. But not everybody has the same opinion as far as what is the proper amount of personal space. So my main thing when I was trying to word it to myself, what am I trying to get across? What am I trying to accomplish? How do we handle feeling strongly about certain things, about what's right for me or my family, but not imposing that opinion on other people? This is something I've always struggled with. How do you feel strongly about something that's right for you, right for your family, and not feel like everyone else ought to feel strongly about that or have the same opinion as me? So I thought we would just talk a little bit about that. How do you distinguish between what's an opinion and what is truth? What are some ways that we can navigate this, and what does the Bible have to say about it? And so that's kind of what I'm thinking. What do you think about all that? What's your opinion, Kathy?
That's my opinion. You started bringing up some of those different areas, and some of
Did
them
I make you nervous?
Yes, yes, you did. Some of them make me kind of laugh, because they
Mhm.
can be so silly and
Yeah.
ridiculous. And some of them made me feel cringy because I remember the tension of it, and trying to have a conversation with somebody. And several years ago, when our boys were little, in the Christian sphere, there was a lot of divide when it came
Yeah.
to areas of opinion. And it was
Mhm.
things like you brought up, seems like you brought up one of them now. I can't
Dating,
remember. Yeah, dating.
courting dating.
Yeah, courtship versus
Mhm.
dating was a big one. Homeschooling versus public school was a big one, things like that. And people had very strong opinions about it. And I remember at the time just being so amazed that no matter which side, we fell on the choices that we were making for our own family, some people would present their, I've even heard, we did homeschool. We chose to do that. We took it 1 year at a time and ended up doing it all the way through. But I remember hearing some people who homeschooled making comments that made it sound like, well, if you don't homeschool, you must not care about the souls of your children.
Yeah.
And Neil and I were always like, oh, please don't lump us in that camp, because we do not feel that way at all,
Mhm.
And so many of the things that you're talking about in the grand scheme of things come down to, a matter of opinion, certainly, but also they have nothing to do with what's right or what's wrong. This way is better. You should do things my way. If you don't, I don't understand you. But I was kind of thinking back to more personally, there are some areas of that are easier to see than others,
Yeah.
and there are some strong feelings that I had, growing up and forming my opinions and all that I thought were not opinions.
Mhm.
And,
Exactly.
and it took some time. And so I think there's that matter too of understanding where people are in their own life and their journey and
Mhm.
what they've been exposed to. And some people don't realize how strongly they're coming across because they don't realize it is in fact an opinion, a matter of opinion.
Right.
And they think it's a matter of doctrine or, so
Mhm.
I'm sure you're going to get to that whole, how do you tell the difference? Is it this is a fact thing, this is a doctrine thing, or is it a matter of opinion? How do you tell the difference?
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
hopefully.
but
I don't think I have like the full answer about that, but even just to put that question in our minds, I think helps,
mhm.
because a lot, like you said, you grow up a certain way, you're taught a certain way, and you don't have the maturity or the, what's the word, you can't distinguish, you don't have the discernment that you need yet to know that this is not uh based in fact or based on scripture. It's based on maybe how your parents did things, and it's not that they intended for you to come away thinking this is Bible truth. It's just that that's how they did it, and so you thought everybody should do it that way. And if you don't do it that way, why
Exactly.
not? You must, like you said, you must not care anything about what God says about it. And so I think in some ways it is important for parents to get that across to their children, that this is the way we do it for our family, and not every family is going to do it this way. And my parents probably said that to me, and I just didn't hear it or didn't understand it. But I think that there was a lot. I know my mom listens to it. Mom, you did this perfectly. I'm sure I just wasn't always listening, because
Good
sometimes I
job,
didn't
Mom.
listen. Yeah, good job, Mom. But back to the homeschool thing with you and I, that was one of the things that instantly drew me to you, because when we became friends was in the middle of you were in the middle of homeschooling. I was in the middle of, our kids were public school. But so I think I assumed when I very first got to know you a little bit, that because you homeschooled, you thought that I should do that as well. And when you told me, I remember it was an email, there was some kind of email, we were talking about it, and you made it clear to me that that was the decision that y'all had made, and that you respected the decision that we had made. And it was just so refreshing, because for I don't I know that not everybody that is on this side or that side feels like it's my way or the highway, but you just kind of feel yourself being defensive about your decision, because you hear other people say things like you said, you must not care about your children. And there's so many, without going too far into this, there's just so many factors for each family: where you live, what kind of school district you're in, how involved you are with your children, who are the teachers. Do there's, you cannot make a decision like that for other people, because you don't have all the facts. You can say this is what we've chosen to do for our family, but it's very damaging, I believe, to impose how you feel about something that God has not given you a black and white answer about. So,
Well, my apologies to all homeschoolers and no vacciners and all that kind of stuff. But initially, in the very beginning, when our first son was born, somebody took me out to lunch and tried to convince me that we should homeschool. And I just kind of nodded and smiled and ate my lunch and went home and told Neil, and I was like, she's crazy. There is no way. I know some homeschoolers and they are weird. I mean, I just was like, we are
ooh, we're
not,
crossing into territory.
we are not doing that. Now, keep in mind how long ago this was also.
Yeah.
And so, for various reasons, we lived in a very progressive city, and I won't get into all that, but we ended up last minute deciding to homeschool, and I was terrified. And we were the only people in our congregation at the time to even be doing it. So, but you just kind of, and then when I always, our boys got immunizations and all that kind of stuff too. And it wasn't very common, but I remember running across a couple of people that decided not to do that. And in my mind, I was like, are you crazy? Why would you put your kids' health at risk? And I remember just being flabbergasted. Whereas now, if I was in that position, I would probably just ask more questions.
Yeah.
Like, what is this for? What's in it? What's it do? What's it? I see the value in at least learning more and being more educated about it, instead of saying, well, they said I have to get the shots, so let me get the shots.
Yeah.
So I think like I said earlier, you just kind of grow and you learn things and you look at things a little bit differently. You have very strong opinions about how you should raise kids before you have kids.
Exactly.
And then when you have them, you just kind of learn as you go and do the best you can with where you are. But I wonder, go ahead.
Well, one of the things with age, you realize, for other people who are younger than you realize, okay, I had the time to grow and learn and make decisions on my own. She has the same, give them grace, to give them time to grow and understand, and realize some things that you have had time to learn and grow and realize. So Anyway, what were you going to say?
Well, another area to extend grace is that I think sometimes somebody's just excited
Mm-hmm.
about something they've just learned or a new discovery or this, for example, think about if you change the way you eat and you decide processed foods are so bad for you and we're going to stay away from processed meats and seed oils and, all the other things that are really trendy right now that are
Mm-hmm.
demonized,
Right.
and maybe you change the way you eat and you do start feeling better and your inflammation does
Mm-hmm.
go down because you gave up sugar and you blah blah blah. Well, you're so excited about it and so passionate and so on board with it that you talk about it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes that passion can come across like, why are you still eating hot dogs?
Yeah.
Don't you know that you're
Aside
feeding
from the
cancer
fact that
in
they
your
can be
body?
gross.
Yeah. And so sometimes we don't mean to come across like we're judgy.
Yeah.
We're just so excited about it and we want everybody to know it. And,
Yeah.
so looking at it from both sides, temper your enthusiasm sometimes when you're
Mm-hmm.
talking to somebody, but also don't assume when somebody's talking to you about what they're doing, their lifestyle, their opinions and choices,
Mm-hmm.
that they're judging you for not doing things their
Yeah.
way. They could just be all in right now and very excited
Yeah.
about it. And
That's a great point. We have to receive it well and be
mm-hmm,
careful how we receive the way that people are giving us information. And I
mm-hmm,
was thinking about different reasons why we are passionate about opinions, and we have feelings, we
mm-hmm.
just have feelings about things, and either we're excited about them or um another thing I was thinking about is like past life experiences. So I had a wreck and I didn't, but maybe I had a wreck because this happened. And so it's made me more cautious about this, or just things that have happened in our own life that have made us form opinions. And maybe they're traumatic things that happened, which can really affect how we feel about the rest of our life. And it leads to an opinion that we feel super strongly about. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we don't realize it's an opinion because we feel so strongly about it. But when you take a step
Exactly.
back, okay, why do I feel this way? Is it because of X that happened to me 20 years ago? Or is it because of this? Is it an opinion? Or how can I base this? And can I prove this as a fact or as truth from scripture? I also think that there are personality issues that make us very opinionated. Some people are just opinionated.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
we're all opinionated, but there are some of us who are quite
They're
free in
they're willing
sharing their
to share
opinions.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
and
gonna
they'll,
know how they feel about something.
whether you want to or not.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And there are people who are confrontational about it. I
Mhm.
mean, there's just no other way of saying it. And speaking of the internet, they have a platform, or they have a
Mhm.
small platform, or they think they have a platform in which to share their opinions. And what is it about being behind a keyboard that you feel free to say whatever you think you can say and not pause a moment? As if you had a person across from you, you would not say that to them, or you wouldn't say it to them in that way. Or,
Mhm.
I mean, I think we feel so free to say whatever we think, and we don't necessarily feel like we have to base it in fact. It's okay, this is just how I feel. And then when we see things that are not, they don't match our opinions, it just inflames us, and we spit something back out through our keyboard, and then it becomes a fight.
Mhm.
And then it becomes about winning the argument and not winning a soul, winning the fight and not winning by finding the truth about something. It's just because my opinion is right and yours is not. And I mean, you want we always talk about this. To
Yeah.
me, it comes down to humility and pride. So many things come down to humility versus pride. And opinions fit into that as well. Because if I have humility when it comes to an opinion, I'm able to say, okay, tell me what you think about it and let me hear and let me absorb, and I want to know what you think about this, as
Mhm.
opposed to pride that's my mind is already made up and there's not anything that you can say that's going to change my mind.
Mhm.
And don't you think it's a pride and humility issue? I
Yeah.
think it comes down to that so many times.
Well, and the
Um,
challenge is the distance between you and the person that holds a differing opinion.
yeah.
Because you see all kinds of crazy stuff out in the world, and you're like, I mean, I wouldn't do that, but I don't know who they are. I don't care what they're doing. I don't, but when it's somebody close to you, somebody that you work with, somebody in your family, somebody in your church family, and their opinion is so different from yours, that's when that pride and humility comes into play. And, one example, and I'm not saying we have this in our family, but like parenting, there's all kinds of opinions out there.
Really?
Yes. Did you know?
I did not know that.
Styling, parent styles and gentle parenting versus traditional parenting. And,
let's talk about spanking.
And let's talk about spanking.
Let's not talk about spanking.
And so let's say that you raise your children one way, to the best of your ability. And then, you have children who are having children and they're going at a completely different way. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden it's different because you're like, well, those are my grandchildren. I mean, I wouldn't have done it that way, but you have to extend the same courtesy of, well, yes, but that's their children and they get to make the best decisions for their family because it's opinion. And I wish I could remember it. There's this guy that wrote a book. I think his name is Kevin DeYoung. And he talks about how, and with ideas of parenting, that he was like, back in my day, when we were bringing up kids, we just had to make sure they were fed, clothed, and educated and stayed away from explosives. Like that was the extent of parenting. And he said, now you have to make sure they sleep on their side, or is it their stomach? Oh no, it's their side now. And they've got pictures of Starry, Starry Night all around their nursery while they're listening to Mozart and, qualifying for the best, and he was like, what in the world?
Yeah. Social media. Thank you.
Yeah. But that plays a part in it is with every generation.
Yeah.
Lifestyle changes, things change, new toys and gadgets for parenting, trying to put a car seat
forget it
in a car these days, you like need an engineering degree.
Yeah.
What
yeah,
have
I don't
they
even
done?
Try. I just let the boys
What have they done to the car seat? And why did they make me feel so dumb?
I came across a picture of the car, like in the picture we were carrying Jordan in his car seat, and it's just this rinky-dink little. I mean, it looks like what you think of as an infant carrier. What you sit on the table and you put the baby in there. That's what the car seat looked like, and you just pull the strap across. I mean, I'm thankful for safer ways of doing things, so I'm glad. But whenever I think about parenting, I think, okay, well, ideas are different, but so were ideas different when I was parenting. And there's no doubt that my parents and my in-laws said, that's different. So it just, it changes,
So, but that's just one example of how, they're doing the same thing that we did. They're bringing up children in their home, but in a different culture. And they're bringing theirs up in the digital age and will be facing completely different challenges and things. We had that in our home too, but later, when the boys are a little bit older, definitely they didn't grow up in that. And so they are going to be making choices in a different environment than we did. And that's probably just about true for every subject that comes up where there is a divisive matter of opinion.
Yeah. And I feel I have crazy respect for what my kids are going through. And, they have little children right now, but they're heading into older kids and the thought of what they're going to be facing. And I know every generation has had this. It's just a new generation, but what they even just making decisions, because I think you can find a statistic to back up whatever you already believe. So you already believe this for very whatever true. Reason, because your feelings or your past, whatever past experience has made you to have this opinion. So you can go find something to bolster what you already believe. And I don't know, I've said this so many times to John, I don't know how to find the truth on, the politics, because you can find whatever you're looking for. And I don't know who is really telling the truth. And so I tend to not believe anybody, that's to my detriment. And it makes me sad for our generation and any generation to come, is like, you can hide the truth. You can spin it. There's just, I honestly don't feel like there's a way of getting down to the true facts, because like with immunizations, you can find whatever you're looking
Oh
for.
yeah, that's such a good point. We found that to be true. Even something as simple and unimportant as homesteading. And you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to look at what should you feed chickens? How should you take care of a dairy cow? And there will be information sites out there saying completely
Yeah.
opposite things. And it was I'm an information gatherer. I like to know things ahead of time. And it was so
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming for me. But how are we supposed to do this? Because this says this, but this one says this, and which one's right? I
Yeah.
don't know. Thank God for the Bible
Mm-hmm.
that
Literally.
doesn't change with each generation, that's
Mm-hmm.
always true, that you can have 100% confidence in it. And you
Yeah.
don't have to worry about, well, this says this, but this contradicts it and says this.
Right. Well, just thinking about all of the memes that get thrown out there, little cartoons or little jokes. And I have a sense of humor. I think things are funny, and I
Mm-hmm.
probably have a little bit more sarcasm in me than I should. It's something that I've fought over the years. I literally have fought sarcasm because it's just not helpful, as my husband would say. Used to drive the
Well, but
boys
if you're
crazy.
good at it and it's funny, isn't that a gift that I've been given and I should share it?
No,
No?
because there's
Okay.
a barb. There's
Oh,
always a
okay.
barb that hurts people. And even just this week, and I sent this to you, and I hesitated, didn't know if to bring this up or not, but the little cartoon of, here's these two lines. And on one side, there's a window, and above the window, it says healthy lifestyle changes. Nobody's in that line. And then on the other line, everybody's in this line, and it says drugs and surgery. So it didn't have any other caption other than that.
Mm-hmm.
So the implication is all anybody wants to do to get healthy is use drugs or surgery.
The quick fix.
The
Yeah.
quick fix. Nobody wants to make healthy lifestyle changes. And I get where that's coming from, because
Mm-hmm.
most people do want a quick fix. Hey, I mean, I want a quick fix,
Mm-hmm.
but it implies that anybody who goes this route has not done this route. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not always true. Sometimes it might be, but I think most of the time it is not true. So, me personally, I couldn't share something like that because it's not completely true. And because I know personally that it's not completely true. And because I think it hurts people, I think it does not help any situation. I mean, what person's going to look at something like that and go, oh, you know what? You're right. I think I'm going to try healthy lifestyle changes instead of drugs and surgery because of this cartoon. It just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work that way. What works with people is friendship and relationship and love and care and empathy
Mm-hmm.
and sympathy and time.
Mm-hmm.
And here we just throw these cartoons out there. And I don't know who all shared it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure some of my friends shared it.
Yeah.
And I know that they didn't intend to throw a barb my way. But it's things like that that make me hesitant to, like I shared a couple weeks ago, trying this new drug to help control weight. It makes you hesitant to say anything because someone's going to have an opinion about it and freely
Mm-hmm.
share their opinion, and it's not going to be the same as yours, but they don't know all of the facts behind. They've not sat in your doctor's appointment with you. Anyway, I should back off of that because, I obviously have feelings about that. But
Well, it's
what?
really easy to get caught up in whatever your current concern is,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw that too. Before you sent it to me, I had seen it gone around, and you hear things about big pharma,
Yeah.
and all
Money
the money
grabbers.
grabbers,
Mm-hmm.
which may or may not be true, but there's also situations where without it, some people would be dead,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and or I had one in my mind that journalism, like the news. You can't trust anything you hear on the news. They're just out for sensationalism, or they're
Mm-hmm.
slanted, or they're blah, 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 which have probably felt very strongly about for a long time. But we had a young man who was in journalism and on the nightly news, and one time made a comment, and he said, I wish people would think before they make comments like that, because not
Yeah.
everybody in that industry is
Right.
that way. And some people actually do care about the truth and getting it
Mm-hmm.
out there. And I'd never even thought about that before. I'd
Yeah.
never thought about how our comments come across and how they can be hurtful to people that are actually in the news industry, and we just
Mm-hmm.
kind of lump everybody together when we say the news,
Yeah.
just I don't watch the news. And that's another situation like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you get caught up in your ideas, your opinions, and you just lump it all together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
It's
say
this way
things
across the
flippantly.
board, and I have the freedom to share my opinion on this. And while that's true, be careful that what you're saying isn't hurtful and to other people who are in a different situation.
Yeah. And along those lines, I mean, there are a lot of things that are true, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't help to say them, or
Mm-hmm.
you may know them to be true, but not everybody does, and they need time to digest and understand. And also, you were talking about journalists, teachers. I told
Mm-hmm.
you about that panel that we had at lectureship at Bear Valley, and one of them on the panel was a sweet, sweet woman who is a public school teacher. She teaches middle school math. You talk about trenches.
Yeah,
Middle
wow.
school kids are tough, and math
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
tough.
A
And
double
making those
whammy.
two meet, yeah.
Yeah.
But she does. But she was her assignment to talk about was how can the church help public school teachers? And she literally could not get through the things that she had prepared because of the tears. And what she was trying to get across was we need to support them and understand that they are trying to help the
Mm-hmm.
situation. When so many times you see people say things like, all teachers want now is to teach your children, or to, what's the word that they use, to make your children into these little people of the state. I can't even say things right, but
Mm-hmm.
there are so many teachers out there who work in public schools who are trying their best to be a light.
Mm-hmm.
And what do? We don't think about the things that we say. We don't think first before we throw something out there about the evil public schools. And I know there are some out
Mm-hmm.
there who are really not doing good things and are indoctrinating our children, is the word I was trying to think of. But there are many, many, many Christian public school educators that need our love and support, and they need us to not be so flippant with our comments and our quickly formed opinions without doing our research.
Man, I was trying to think about, I mentioned some of the things that I ran across as we were bringing up children with the courtship, homeschooling, vaccinations, and there just weren't that many, it seems like. And, I think when I was young, growing up in the home of my parents, the big controversy was over stay-at-home moms versus women going to work.
Mhm.
And like that was a big deal, and everybody had strong opinions on both sides. And
Right.
you know and I just wonder if maybe there are so many more of them because we're exposed to so much more. You mentioned the influencers who have a platform,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to get out there and share their message and their thoughts and feelings, and we spend a lot of time online. We're exposed to this stuff all the time, people telling us what to think and how to think and what to buy and how to vote. And
Mm-hmm.
it's coming at us 24/7.
Yeah. And I
So
keep wondering, why do we give them a platform?
yeah.
Why do we let some Hollywood person tell us who we should vote for? Why does that even matter? I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
don't get that.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be careful, even in saying that, because some people respect.
Yeah.
I don't understand it myself, but
Mm-hmm.
it does not help for me to say you're stupid and crazy if you listen to
Mm-hmm.
someone in Hollywood to tell you how to vote. That doesn't help. What helps is if
Well,
I give the truth,
yes.
and love, and I guess more than anything, my attitude and how I present how I feel about something and how I feel about how you feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sense.
Well, and then think about the algorithms that are constantly monitoring our own use and sending to us what they think we need to see or hear or buy. And you know how Amazon does that. Like
Yeah.
you'll get an Amazon email and it'll say, "Here are some things we thought you'd like."
Yeah.
And I used to go, "Oh, really?" And I'd open it up and I go, yeah, that is kind of interesting. Based on
Yeah.
what you purchased or looked at or whatever. I've always been like, really? Oh,
Yeah.
and now
They
for
must really care about me.
whatever reason, I'm so kind of fed up with like being stalked that I
Mhm.
don't even open those emails. I just delete them, and it gives me a sense of power. I'm like
Yeah.
going, here, Amazon, here's something we think. Oh yeah, I don't care what you think.
Yeah.
I might like, I'm not even going to look at it. I make
Yeah.
up my own mind.
Thank you very much.
That's right, but I
Yeah.
digress.
Yeah. Well, and I think what our purpose for today is not to change your opinion about homeschool, about stay-at-home moms, about immunizations, whatever. We're not trying to change anyone's opinions. What we want to do is talk about what the Bible has to say about this. And it does have quite a bit to say about it. I mean, it has a lot to say about it, really. Um, there's, of course, we're going to end up in Romans 14, but before we go there, Luke 6:31 and Matthew 7, treat others the same way you want to be treated. That just covers everything, doesn't it? It just covers everything, everywhere in life. To treat others the way you want to be treated. So if you want someone to respect your opinion and listen to you, then you need to respect their opinion and listen to them. And it's pretty much as simple as that. And not look down with disdain or contempt, which the Bible uses that word, Romans 14. That's something, disdain is one of those things. I've thought about this for a topic, things that net Christians should never feel. And disdain is one of them. I just don't think that has any place in our heart. And yet it's there. We
What a
look
word.
down. Yeah, we look down and see them with contempt, just treat them with disdain because they feel
Even if we
differently.
don't verbalize it,
Mhm.
are we mentally thinking that way? Our arrogance and our own arrogance and pride because they think or view something differently than we do.
Yeah, like I just said about people who look to someone in Hollywood to tell them, I have that feeling of disdain for why someone would look to someone in Hollywood for a recommendation of who to vote for. And I shouldn't feel that way. I I need to be careful in how I word things. And I think that's my point is be careful, take thought. Don't just vomit your opinion out on everyone. Recognize that it is an opinion. So Romans 14. And I'm sure you do that we would end up here, but I wanted to take just a little bit of time and read some of Romans 14 and the beginning of Romans 15. And keep in mind, I know you know this, that this is talking about Jewish Christians. So think about that. People who were of the Jewish faith, who were born into being Jews, but have become Christians. And you think, I mean, when I in Israel now think about the very idea of one of those Orthodox Jews becoming a Christian, it kind of blows my mind because they have such a distinct way of living, distinct way of dressing, a distinct way of eating. You have a kosher kitchen. You don't have things that touch. Certain things don't touch. Certain things don't enter your kitchen because they're not kosher. So think about those Jews becoming Christians and the freedoms that they had, but didn't realize that they had or did not know how to embrace those freedoms. They needed that time that we were just talking about. They needed time to grow into understanding what that freedom meant. And so he talks about weak and strong, and it's not about necessarily being a better Christian or not as good of a Christian, but about someone who's weak in faith because they haven't had time, like a child, haven't had time to grow yet. Give them time. Or a stronger Christian who's a more mature Christian. But in Romans 14, he says, now accept the one who is weak in faith, but not for the purpose of passing judgment on his opinions. One person has faith that he may eat all things, but he who is weak eats vegetables only. The one who eats is not to regard with contempt. There's that word, disdain, contempt. The one who does not eat and the one who does not eat is not to judge the one who eats, for God has accepted him. Who are you to judge the servant of another? Are you judging God's servant? To his own master he stands or falls or fails. My glasses can't show me if that's fails or falls. Is it falls?
Mine says falls.
Okay. And he will stand, for the Lord is able to make him stand. One person regards one day above another. Another regards every day alike. Each person must be fully convinced in his own mind. He who observes the day observes it for the Lord, and he who eats does so for the Lord, for he gives thanks to God. And he who eats not for the Lord, he does not eat, and gives thanks to God. For not one of us lives for himself, and not one dies for himself. For if we live for the Lord, or if we die for the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ died and lived again, that he might be Lord both of the dead and of the living. But you, why do you judge your brother? Or you again, why do you regard your brother with contempt? for we will all stand before the judgment seat of God. For it is written, as I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall give praise to God. So then each one of us will give an account of himself to God. Therefore, let us not judge one another anymore, but rather determine this, not to put an obstacle or a stumbling block in a brother's way. Just for time's sake.
Pretty straightforward there.
Yeah. Skip down to chapter 15, verse 1. Now we who are strong ought to bear the weaknesses of those without strength and not just please ourselves. Each of us is to please his neighbor for his good, to his edification. For even Christ did not please himself, but as it is written, the reproaches of those who reproached you fell on me. Mm-hmm. So that, it couldn't be any more straightforward than that, to be careful with the way that we see our fellow Christians or see those in the world. And I was just looking through the imperatives in that, the verbs that are saying this is the way you're to be. One of them is to accept those who are weak in faith. Mm-hmm. And that word accept is to welcome. Mm-hmm. So how do we look at those who are, how we would say, what's a better way of saying weak in faith, less mature, or how do we look at someone who doesn't have the same strength and opinion? Mm-hmm. But even that sounds a little bit haughty to say that my opinion is stronger than yours, even though in this context, of course, they obviously had freedom to eat the meat, but some of them did not realize that yet. So how do we view someone that is not as mature as we are? With humility, obviously, that's comes from other Bible verses as well. But this says that we're to welcome them. Mm-hmm. And it goes on to say, not for the purpose of passing judgment on his opinion. So our attitude enters in there too. It's not just the fact that we do it or don't do it, welcoming someone, but that we are careful in our attitude, how we see them. And so it says, do not, this is another imperative, do not regard them with contempt. Don't despise them. Do not judge. And then I thought it was interesting where it says, be fully convinced. So many opinions, I think, where we think we're fully convinced, but sometimes I want to ask someone, so tell me what, this is probably not nice of me, but someone who has a strong opinion, tell me how have you done some study on this? What, maybe it's this issue in the church who they have heard that it's wrong, but they couldn't tell you why it's wrong. It's just that they have that opinion because someone they respect or someone they heard say that's wrong, but they couldn't tell you. So are you fully convinced? I don't think you're fully convinced. You're just following along after someone else's opinion. Then it says to determine not to put an obstacle or a stumbling block in our friend's way, so that it doesn't imply it. It says it. We are to make up our minds that we're not going to be this way. And so when I look at things on social media, it really appears to me, and I point at myself as well, I have not determined to not be a stumbling block to someone else. I mean, I think that I have cut back on things that I express on Facebook because of this, because I think that it is an outlet that we can express how we feel about something, but just because we can, does that mean we should? And I've also seen how it hurts people, how when we say things, we didn't really intend to hurt, but we do. And yeah, sometimes I think we got to put our big girl pants on and not be so sensitive, but we bear responsibility for the things that we say and that we post and that we write. And have we determined that we're not going to be offensive? Have we determined? I just don't think we have. We just feel like we can say whatever we want to say. And we'll hear people say, well, it is what it is. I am who I am. Take me or leave me. I can't help it. That's just that's just who I am. And I think we have to be careful about that. We have to be really slow in
Mm-hmm.
saying things like that and in throwing things out there without thinking them through. And I think before we post something or say something or email something or tweet or whatever you do on Twitter now or whatever it's called, do we need to stop and pray about it? When Micah was little, and he would say things. He was funny and he would just blurt things out. And sometimes you could tell when he was about to say something that was probably, not maybe not the best idea. And his brothers would say, think, think again. You want to think one more time before you say that? And I thought of that so many times as an adult, like, okay, do I need to think? Think again. Okay, think one more time.
Mm-hmm.
How about praying about it before you say it or post it?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe somebody might think that I'm overreacting about this, but I have seen how it alienates people and it really damages your influence as a Christian when you flippantly post and say things that are very much your opinion and not based in truth, in fact.
Kind of cracks me up when people will post something and they'll start it out by saying, now don't flood my feed with your comments, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just expressing my thoughts and my view, and so, and then they'll say whatever they want to say, and it's like, they're if you have to preface, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you're about to say with, I know this is controversial, but let
Yeah.
me have my say without you saying yours.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they want to do. Let me throw out this controversial topic, but I don't want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Well, if you have to say something like that before you post it, chances are you probably shouldn't post it. So
Yeah.
save yourself the trouble. And I love that you chose this text because I'm reading it out of the ESV,
Mm-hmm.
the English Standard Version. And verse 1 says, as for the one who is weak in faith, welcome him, but not to quarrel over opinions. And really, doesn't that just kind of remove all burden from us anyway?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to think differently than you, view things differently, have a different opinion. Welcome them.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole not to quarrel over opinions. You know what that means? It means don't try to convince them to think like you.
Yeah.
That's not the purpose of welcoming someone, is so that you can help them mature in
Mm-hmm.
their opinion. It sounds like in this whole text, and the way, everyone's going to stand before God, everyone is going to esteem something is
Mm-hmm.
more important than you. Everyone's going to have their own different opinion. Just love people and welcome them, and don't try and convince them that your way is better. Don't try and change their opinion. And if we could just keep that, therefore let us not pass judgment on one another any longer. If we could just keep that in our mind, doesn't that kind of take the burden off of
Mm-hmm.
our shoulders
Yeah.
anyway? Isn't that very freeing anyway? God in his wisdom knows what we need as
Mm-hmm.
people to get along and show unity to the world. And this is it right here.
Yeah.
Welcome one another and quit trying to make people think like you do.
Yeah. It makes me think of the First Peter passage that says that Jesus suffered for as an example, and it didn't matter what people said or did against him. He kept entrusting himself to the one who judges justly. And like you said, it's freeing to me to be able to know that I can entrust myself to God. Someone may judge how I feel, how I say things, which again, I know I take bear responsibility in how I say things, but if someone doesn't like my opinion, I get to be judged by God, not someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And it is freeing to know that
Mm-hmm.
I can let God judge that person. I don't have to do that. That's not up to me.
Mm-hmm.
So much forms who we are. And I think we have to keep that in mind when we don't understand people, how they think. Sitting, we were blessed to go worship with the church in Athens last, maybe it was earlier this year or last year, I can't remember. And they have 4 different services at that church building. It's called the Glyphada Church of Christ in a suburb of Athens. And they have an English speaking service, they have a Greek speaking service, they have an Iranian Farsi service, and then they have a Ukrainian, because they have so many refugees from Ukraine. And we we were there, of course, for the English speaking, but we stayed long enough, and they had something special that day that they all converged upon the church. And so there was Iranian refugees, there were Ukrainian refugees, there were Greek nationalist people, and then there were English people from Harding University that were there for school. Our traveling group was there, and I was looking around at all of these people, all these faces, especially down the row in front of me. There was these two Iranian men, and I thought to myself, they're refugees from their home country, but they're Christians. They don't think like I think. They have had completely different experiences. They didn't grow up in a small town in Texas with very faithful Christian parents in a very sheltered environment like I had. And they have not lived in the same county for 40 years. They don't even have counties. So to me, that it's presumptuous of me to think that they should think like I think. I use the word think 4 times in a sentence. That was just a kind of an eye-opening moment to me, to look around that church building and to know, I mean, not all of them were New Testament Christians, but many of them were. And many of them have grown up very differently from me. And they have looked at life differently than I have. Their experiences have shaped them. But their relationship between them and God is between them and God. And I can use scripture and teach scripture, but there are a lot of things that are a matter of opinion that make us who we are, that we have to respect and have to allow. Maybe it's a weakness, an immaturity in Christ because they are new and coming to Christ. But I've got to respect that and welcome them and be glad for them and be the kind of person that shines that light on the Lord and not on myself, but makes them want to be more involved in scripture and in Christianity, not repel them. And I think so much of what we do tends to repel people, and I don't want to be that way.
Well, verse 19 says, am I in the same chapter or am I in the next chapter? So then let us pursue what makes for peace and for mutual upbuilding. Do not, for the sake of food, destroy the work of God. So it's if you are going to pursue peace and unity, then you're not going to worry about their opinions on all of these things. You're just going to welcome them and not try and change their mind. And it definitely falls in line with what you were saying. Everybody that walks in the door, you're sharing a more dramatic example of a foreign country with people from all over the world. But even bring it down more locally, in our own congregations, we still have that same thing, maybe not to the same extent, but people with different backgrounds, different upbringings, different exposures, different family, lifestyle, whatever, coming in that door. And what's going to pursue peace is just to welcome them and not try and change their mind. Now, I do feel like we should clarify, lest we're showing any kind of confusion here. We're talking about opinions, not doctrine. There's a big, big difference, of course. And we're not talking about everybody's okay. We're not talking about truths taught in scripture. We're not talking about God's plan for salvation and worship and anything like that. We're just talking about strictly things that are matters of opinion that Romans 14 is laying out very clearly. There are things that fall into that category that are a matter of opinion. And they both might seem right to the person who feels that way. But in certain things, you can both have a different opinion and still be right. Unlike truth and doctrine. Which
absolutely
is the only thing that's right. So.
And I've sort of purposely separated the two, not talking about doctrine as opposed to opinion, because the topic is respecting others' opinions. But of course we have to make that clear and make that known that we're not talking about truth, and that might figuring out what's truth and what's opinion is maybe a topic for another day, because that's sometimes difficult. But
well, I just want to make sure we're not creating confusion just from some of the things that we've said about somebody walking in the door who might not think like we do or been taught like we do or whatever, we're to accept them and not try and change their mind. Well, obviously we are only talking about things in the area that don't
Yeah.
matter. They're matters of opinion. We are
Right.
not talking about accepting people where they are when they're not even following God's plan, you know.
Yeah, and maybe to clarify a little bit more what I was saying, looking at these two Iranian men that were dressed in their typical Iranian garb and thinking about how we have arguments about how we are to dress in worship, and they do not dress like Americans dress. So does that mean that we're wrong, they're wrong? That falls into the matter of opinion.
Right.
And then there was another thing I was thinking about, how where we joke about this, and I know everybody knows this is it's a matter of opinion. The 2 songs of prayer, 2 songs of communion, the order of worship. They probably have no idea how we typically do things here. And again, is it presumptuous of us to think that because we have always done it this way, this is the way it should be done? The order of our service. So opinions versus truth of scripture. Yeah, we definitely need to make sure that that's clear. Hopefully it is. If not, understand people. It's a matter of opinion that we're talking about today. I know we need to kind of hurry because I have no idea how long we've been going. Do you?
I think about an hour and 15 or 20
Oh,
minutes.
so we need to hurry, finish.
Yeah.
Okay, so verse 17. Yeah, you just brought that up. Talking about, he says, the kingdom of God is not about eating and drinking, but righteousness and peace and joy in the Holy Spirit. It's not about the food. It's not about the meat. It's not about the food. It's about righteousness and joy and peace. And we have to remember that when we get bogged down in these opinions, and remember what God wants us to prioritize. And I think it's not about the food. And like you said, verse 19, pursue the things that make for peace. There was an article that I read that I thought was really good. I want to read a couple of things from it, and I'll try to post these because it's always hard when someone reads something to keep up. So I'll try to post these next week. Freedom in such matters tends to create an attitude of superiority. It's tempting to hold up for ridicule those whose lifestyle is more restricted than one's own, like those who will not eat meat, those Jewish Christians. In the broad spectrum of Christianity, those to the right are often caricatured as hopelessly fundamental. The problem is that one person's overly scrupulous neighbor is another person's libertarian. It all depends on where you happen to stand along the spectrum. The Christian is not to despise or treat with contempt those who are still working through the relationship between their new faith in Christ and the psychological and emotional pressures of a previous orientation. And now I'm paranoid about people thinking we're talking about truth, and I'm not talking about truth. I'm talking about opinions. Let people have time to come to a maturity in Christ. Let people, even those who are not Christians, give them time to learn truth, and not assume that because they are still worldly that they're worthless. What are we doing to draw and attract them as opposed to repelling them and offending them? And I think that it's so easy to use those matters of opinion in one way or another. We can draw people by saying, this is my opinion. And we can repel people by saying, this is my opinion. So we have to be careful about that. I'll just say these real fast. We didn't get to these. Some ideas to know how we can be better at expressing opinions and learning opinions. How do I know that I'm working on this? The first one is, am I listening to others? And I think there's so many of us that we spend a lot of time talking, but we don't spend a lot of time listening. I feel like I've spent a lot of time talking this morning and not enough listening. But that to me is an example of Philippians 2, where are we being like Christ? Are we regarding other people as more significant than we are? And one of the ways that we can indicate that is by listening, being a better listener. If we can't listen, we just talked about this on an episode a couple weeks ago, it indicates that we lack humility. Another way, ask ourselves, is the way that I present or have my opinion honoring God? So this has to do with our attitude and the way that we express our opinions. Is the way that I express my opinion a way that honors God? Have I even thought about God before I say what I'm saying or post what I'm posting? And if you can't ask yourself that question, I think that should be a filter that we use all the time. Have I thought about God first? Have I thought about my commitment to Him? Colossians 3, whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord. Do everything through that filter of God. The third one is my opinion or how I present it going to affect my own judgment, which is a pretty sobering thought. If I'm throwing my opinions out there in such a way that God is going to say, hold on now, in the way that you judge, you'll be judged. God's going to judge us in the way that we judge others. We got to be careful. I know that's a longer discussion. I hate how we have to qualify everything, but we do. We have to qualify everything. Is my opinion or how I present it going to affect my own judgment? Because he said in verse 10 of Romans 14, we will all stand before the judgment seat. I'm not going to stand in front of you. You're not going to stand in front of me. John's not going to stand in front of me. I'm going to have my own standing to do before God. And Matthew 12, verses 36 and 37 say that we're going to give an account of every idle word. And we could probably change that to say we'll give an account for every idle post, every idle thought that we put out there on social media or wherever else. I think it's sobering to me to think about the words that we say to each other or to this audience, this broader audience of our the podcast, that we'll give an account for it. And we pray about that every time, that we will honor God. And one more, maybe two more. Will I be a stumbling block to someone when I say whatever I'm going to say, post whatever I'm going to post? How am I using my freedom to express love or disdain? So will I be a stumbling block to someone? Another quote from that particular article, he said, there are times when the loving thing to do is to limit our freedom so we do not undo the work of Christ in others. So we may have the freedom to say something, but that doesn't mean we should. And then here's the last one. Is what I'm saying or posting building up my friend? Each of us is to please our neighbor. And how are we pleased? I mean, I don't think that means that we're to make them happy necessarily, but we're to build them up. We're to do things that's going to point them to God. And that implies that we have self-control, that we have humility, we have compassion, we have love. It just means that we're thinking of others and not ourselves. And sometimes it feels really good to say what we think, just throw it all out there. This is my opinion, but we don't really think about how it's going to affect someone else. And that's, I guess, kind of maybe the bottom line is to honor God in all that we say and all that we do, to think about how what we are saying and doing, posting, how it reflects upon our relationship with the Lord. If it's going to draw others, repel others, because we definitely don't want to repel others from a relationship with God. So I've just talked a lot. You talk, or you wrap it up.
I was just thinking about how you started out by talking about how it can be a pride problem. And, if we just cut to the chase, get to the heart of the matter, in my heart, I shouldn't view my opinion as better than anyone else's anyway. Whether it's a matter of maturity in the faith or weakness in the faith or anything like that. I have no right to put myself on any kind of pedestal or higher plane because of how I think that might be different from how somebody else thinks, and especially in matters of opinion. And if that's the case, why share it anyway? And maybe instead of worrying about all the filters and how should I word this, and why share it if it's a matter of opinion anyway? Mm-hmm. So what purpose? And it kind of makes me think of, like, Neil and I are trying really hard as parents of married kids, because now that makes us in-laws. We want to build and nurture good relationships, and we try really hard. We don't always succeed because sometimes you just do it without realizing it until later. Yeah. But we're trying really hard not to give unsolicited advice or matters of opinion, or, unless they specifically come ask us. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, they're doing great. Yeah. And
even without your opinion,
even without our opinions, they're rocking this adult world thing. And maybe that's just a good way of going about it. And on social media or in your church family or whatever, not everybody wants or needs to hear your opinion anyway.
Yeah, right.
We've got so little time to impact people. Why not fill that time with sharing truth and encouragement?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's really not time or room for opinion anyway. So just keep it to yourself unless somebody comes up and specifically asks you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
my
it's one
opinion.
thing to it's one thing that, when you and I are chatting, whatever, and we express opinions to one another, we know
Yeah.
each other well enough
Yeah.
that um we're not going to take it a certain way. But people that
Right.
don't know
Right.
us, or people that are in a different kind of relationship, that,
Mm-hmm.
a mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, or a I don't know, work relationship, something like that, we just need to be extra cautious and be extra careful, because again, why would we say anything, do anything that might damage or weaken their relationship with God? Why would we do anything to damage our own relationship with them? We're
Mm-hmm.
trying to be like Christ and think about what he did. I mean, he sacrificed his life for us. We can certainly sacrifice our opinions and our words and the things that we really think we need to say. We can just not say them.
Right on.
Sister. All right. You need to have anything else?
Yep.
Okay. Do you have something good for me?
I do. Mine's a recipe. This week I made copycat Starbucks pumpkin cream cheese muffins.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd made them before a couple years ago for a ladies' Bible class, and they turned out really good, but I forgot about them. And then I was needing something to make for somebody else, and I made a batch of them, and they're just so good. They're very moist. They're easy to make. They're delicious. Way cheaper to make your own than to buy them somewhere anyway. But the reason I wanted to share it as something good for you is because Neil doesn't like pumpkin anything.
What's wrong with him?
And I know, and I wanted him to try one of these. I was like, just take a bite, just, before I give it, just tell me what you think. And he was like, fine. And he actually really liked it and voluntarily ate another whole pumpkin muffin. So, and he doesn't like pumpkin, to him is like gag. So I will share the recipe. I mean, I'm sure you can find it out there, but this particular one I thought was really good. It was really easy to make and very fall vibey,
Mm-hmm.
delicious. So I'll
That's
share the
something
rest.
no one will ever say about me, that in a self-sacrificial way, I voluntarily ate another muffin. I mean,
That's right. That's right.
I will do that for self-serving reasons, but not
Exactly.
sacrificially. Have you
Same.
ever thought about how many of our something good for you are foods?
Oh, well, yes, I have thought about that.
Because mine is too.
Is it good?
And that mine is a little bit hard to find. They're baked in Brooklyn sticks. They're like sesame sticks, but
Mm-hmm.
it's honey mustard flavor.
Hmm.
These are pretty hard to find. I mean, you can
I've
order
never
them.
heard of sesame sticks.
Well, it's like a breadstick. They're about the size of your finger.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I first found them at TJ Maxx. They have the snack aisle with things that you don't typically see at the grocery store. And I don't usually like honey mustard very much. I mean, it's okay, but I'm not like crazy about it. But these are just one step below Dot's pretzels to me. But
Wow.
it's really good because I have a really hard time finding them. You can get them online for like $6 or $7 a package, but I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I'm
Hmm.
at TJ Maxx, Home Goods, somewhere like that, I'm scouring the snack aisle for them. And lately I haven't found them. I happened to find this bag, but baked in Brooklyn, they have different flavors. They have like a honey wheat, they have just a plain sesame, but these are yummy.
I bet that'd be
They're
good chopped
hot.
up and sprinkled on a salad.
Yeah. I mean, if you tried to chop them evenly, they would just shatter. But like crushed, I bet that is a good idea. I hadn't thought
Oh,
about that.
hmm.
But there's some heat to them, so there must be some horseradish in it somewhere because it's
Hmm.
a little hot. They're yummy.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of rude to give something that's hard to find, but if you find them, feel free to mail
Something
them to
good for
me.
you. Good
Yeah,
luck.
something good for me. It's more like a scavenger hunt. All right.
Right.
Okay, so
Uh,
a little bit of a touchy subject matter today, because anytime you deal with opinions, it's easy to ruffle feathers, and we weren't and never would never intentionally try to ruffle feathers, but we would intentionally try to push you to be more like what the word wants us to be. Not just you, we are trying to push ourselves to be more that way. And
mhm.
all of you out there who are listening, believe me, we talk about things, ways that we privately talk about ways that we need to be better about things.
Mhm.
And we really genuinely do want to be more like the Lord. We realize our failings, and this is an area where I've definitely failed and I'm trying to do better. But
Yeah, sometimes people will say, "Oh, that episode really stepped on my toes," and I'm like, "Why do you think we talked about it? We
yeah,
talk about the things that we need."
yeah. And one of the areas that I've always struggled with is knowing um, and I don't think we really solved it today, but how do you feel very strongly about something and not impose it on someone else? That's a hard thing because I just have always struggled with that. Anyway, maybe we can talk about that some other day. It's been a good discussion. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here and being part of our little sisterhood. We always enjoy our chats, and we thank you for being listeners. So until next time,
Keep looking up.
good night.